How to play the Queen's Gambit. That's what we're looking at here. I'm continuing my series on this absolutely fascinating opening, and I'm taking you way back into chess history with a look at the match between Capablanca and Alekhine, played in Buenos Aires in 1927. If you want to know something about the Queen's Gambit, then that is a very good place to start. So many interesting games played in the opening in that match. So let's go from the beginning. So this is the 21st game. Capablanca playing white. He has offered the c-pawn. This is the Queen's Gambit. And Alekhine supports that pawn in the middle so that he can recapture and doesn't have to bring his queen into the middle. Knight out c3, knight f6, all very sound, and the bishop pins on g5. Knight d7, supporting the knight. Pawn to e3 and bishop e7. So very sound development from both sides. And rook c1. So with rook c1, obviously the rook is nicely placed on this, well, potentially open file. But really white wants to develop that bishop. But he doesn't want to do it too soon, because if you move the bishop out, then black would take on c4 and kind of win a tempo. So he's hoping to have that useful move included, and then the bishop only gets to c4 in one move. Hope that makes sense. Alekhine plays pawn to a6, and this is a move that I always associate with Alexander Alekhine because he played it so many times in this World Championship match against Capablanca. And it's a very sound move, played to this day by some of the world's leading players. An excellent variation. We're about to find out exactly what the idea is in a second. I should say that Kappa played a3 here. Maybe not the most testing move. I'll come back and look at theory on this right at the end of the game. But anyway, a3. So Capablanca is continuing the battle of the tempo. Doesn't want to play this bishop out yet. h6 from Alekhine. Very good move. This move is going to be useful later on because it gives the king an escape square off the back rank. White doesn't want to exchange. That gives away the two bishops. So the bishop drops back. But you see, the inclusion of that move is certainly beneficial to black. Finally, pawn takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn. And b5. So this is the point of playing the pawn to a6. It supports this advance. The bishop drops back. And here bishop b7 was played. You can also play c5 straight away. But bishop b7, so you can see with that advance of the b pawn, the bishop has come to this fantastic square on the long diagonal. This, if everything goes right for black, then basically this is practically the best minor piece on the board. Superb square for the bishop. b4 is possible here to prevent black from playing c5. And well, Kasparov in his book, My Great Predecessors, thinks this is simply better for white. But actually, it's not clear. After this move, after the exchange, and then knight d5, actually black gets things going and gets some pressure here very quickly before white has castled, and black is actually fine there. In any case, bishop b7 played, castles, and now c5. So if you want a sort of perfect outcome from Alekhine's opening with a6, then this is it. You've got in a6, b5 and bishop b7. And you've also managed to advance your c-pawn to attack white's centre. Black's minor piece is very nicely positioned. You see this formation in the Najdorf and other variations of the Sicilian very often. And they are really harmoniously placed. It's nice that the knight here supports the pawn on c5 and it doesn't block this bishop. You can also see it in the Brea variation of the Spanish where, well, the similar, although it's a different pawn structure, there are similar ideas. It's very harmonious. Now, it could be, in some circumstances, that black is able to push on and create this very nice pawn chain. Therefore, Capablanca exchanges. And with the pawns disappearing on the D and C files, you might imagine that this is going to liquidate to a draw very quickly. But, well, let's see what happens anyway. Knight D4. Okay, that doesn't look bad because this bishop, which isn't doing much, can pop out to F3 and exchange off black's superb bishop here. And that's probably what Capablanca should do now. Bishop F3 and, well, I mean, I slightly prefer black after Queen B6, but it's playable for white. But Capa plays B4, attacking the knight. I mean, if things go well, I can sort of understand this move because it fixes this pawn, and maybe Capa was just looking to simplify. For example, I suspect he had simply anticipated knight here, and after this, well, I don't think white has any difficulties. I think it's just about equal, basically. Looks very even. But Alekhine simply dropped the knight back to D7. It's a very good move and just keeps more juice in the position. So that knight may well spin around via B6 into C4, possibly via E5 as well. But basically that C4 square beckons for the knight. Bishop F3 still seems like a sensible move, but I think black is a little bit better. But Bishop G3 from Capa, and now the game really starts to drift away from the Cuban. Knight B6, so heading into here. Queen B3, and here, well, I mean, Queen B3 looks like a pretty sensible move. I wonder if Capa was anticipating that the knight would hop in here, then the rook moves over, and then he's able to liquidate the pawns on the queen side with A4. But instead of playing the routine knight C4, Alekhine played knight D5, another excellent move. Bishop F3, and now once again, knight C4 is just too routine, but rook C4 from Alekhine, excellent move. So keeping control over these squares and keeping these minor pieces, protecting the knight on D5, but also preparing to shift that queen over to one of these squares, and that is potentially very dangerous, supporting that bishop or supporting the rook. Knight E4. Queen C8 supports, in this case, supports that rook. And now Queen B1 should probably be played, but Capa, well, he's looking to simplify. It's understandable, but actually this helps black. And now an excellent move. The queen has done its job on C8. Queen A8 played. So that lines up the queen and bishop. So now knight takes pawn on B4 as a threat, hitting that knight on E4, if that makes sense. So there's some masked threat through to the knight on E4. And this is already very difficult. The knight dropped back. Rook C8 just supporting that knight, and maybe that knight can hop in here. Looking at these two, could have gone there in the last turn, but this is Rook C8 is even stronger. Knight takes, bishop takes, and now that queen has reached this beautiful central square, supporting the knight, and it is very hard for white to shake off black's grip in the position. Notice that bishop, it's really out of play on G3, and this bishop can easily come into the game on F6, and of course that knight is just wonderfully placed, just lodged really in the heart of White's position. It's looking a bit octopus-ish. I need to show you my Octopus Knight mug. There you go. Available from the PowerPlayChess merch store. Check out the links below. Kappa played a4. Well, a kind of understandable move. Trying to simplify the position, but after this, bishop f6 is very, very strong. Knight came to f3, and here is an excellent move. Tell you what, I'll have a slurp of tea. You have a little think. What should black play next? This is a great move. Bishop b2. That really upsets White. And here we can see that White never got around to playing a pawn move h3. Didn't have time. That would solve a few problems because, well, the king would have an escape square. But here it's difficult. That rook can't step up because the queen would come down and that would be checkmated in a couple of moves. And even after this move, rook d1 looks obvious, but then, well, pawn takes pawn, hits the queen, knight b6. This is a variation given by Alekhine. Rook takes, knight takes. So now there's a threat of mate, as well as to the rook, of course. The rook comes back. Knight c3 hits the rook. It's got to come here. You notice all these squares are covered. Rook c4, and basically that pawn is going to drop. White is just hanging on by his fingernails here, but basically it's gone. Of course, rook takes bishop, rook c1 would be mate. And here, yeah, eventually that pawn is going to drop. There's just too much pressure. And then that a pawn starts to run. So bishop b2, an excellent move. Rook e1 from Kappa. Rook d8. So just taking control of this file with the rook. Pawns exchanged, and h3. Finally Kappa gets around to making that move, but it's too little too late. e5. What a great move. So with this pawn move, these two minor pieces are shut out of the game. You can see that the d4 square is now covered. And, well, basically White is lost here. If pawn to e4, then just queen d3. Actually, both those pawns are weak after the queen exchange. Rook b1 played. e4. Well, the pawn was good on e5, but after this, basically, it's a forcing move, and yeah, White's pieces get pushed back. So, for example, knight here, queen d2. The queen is moving in. In the game, knight d4. Bishop takes. Now, Kappa here simply blundered. He missed a tactic. He played rook d1. If pawn takes, you could just take a pawn for nothing. I actually prefer knight d2, forcing an exchange of queens with a massive positional advantage, and no doubt one of these pawns is going to fall soon anyway. But in the game, rook d1. And here, winning move for black. What's it going to be? Here we go. Knight takes pawn, and that was game over. Pawn takes pawn, then we have queen takes queen. And if queen takes, rook takes, pawn takes knight, bishop takes pawn, check, and we take the rook. There we go. So what a smooth game from Alekhine, actually. And, well, it's interesting. Kasparov commented that after this move, rook c4, he said, generally speaking, I think that in this match, Kappa simply did not guess some of his opponent's moves. And yeah, I have that feeling about this game, that there were certain moments when, for example, here, when Kappa was just expecting knight e4, but didn't anticipate this move, knight d7. and a few moments in the game, Kappa seemed to be surprised by Alikhine's moves. Let's go back to the opening, because after a6, I think a3 basically gives Black very, very easy play. Black gets in exactly what he wants with bishop b7 and c5. If we come back here, the best move here is to play c5. Obviously, Black is a little bit cramped, so you have to break out with either b6 or e5, and it's been established that in this position after c6, here b6 is okay, but e5 is the main line. Now this looks a little bit involved, but after this, the knight comes back here, and this was a game between Topalov and Nielsen, Peter Heine Nielsen, Carlsen's trainer, that went like this. Black recovered the pawn, and basically this is all right for Black. Nielsen managed to equalise. Another possibility is for White to exchange here and get one of these typical Carlsbad structure positions, but it's pretty playable for Black basically. So there we go, there's a bit of theory to keep you going. Don't forget, like, comment, share and subscribe, and yeah, let's try and hit 100k subs. And if you fancy supporting the channel, then links down there. Okay, thanks for watching.